Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's great to be presenting the insurance journey of the future to you in collaboration with Microsoft and as well as with Silverbridge. Introduce to you Ben Berger, Managing Executive, Digital Insurance Division at Silverbridge. Ben has been directly involved in advising on and implementing digitalisation roadmaps for more than 20 insurance companies across Africa. So he's well suited today to present to us on the future of insurance. Ben, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thanks very much, Tony. So I want to talk about the insurance journey of tomorrow, really focusing on long-term insurance. But before I do that, I actually want to talk about gaming a little bit. So in the early 70s, if you look at this picture, it's a really very interesting picture. In the early 70s, when the first arcade game sort of was launched, that red part on the right-hand side that you see there, I think sort of nobody envisioned that where we are today, the biggest part of the gaming world sits in that mobile space. Cell phones didn't even exist when sort of the gaming industry started out, some 50 years odd back. So I think there's an important lesson here there's a reason I wanted to sort of illustrate this, because why the shift? Why the shift in the market? I think if you ask any gamer, how does their experience in terms of the PS5, for instance, compare to a cell phone, they would tell you obviously that the experience is a lot better on the PS5. So why do people choose these little handheld devices? And I think the answer is very simple. It's that convenience factor. Now, it's just more convenient to sort of play games on your phone because your phone is with you all the time. So I wanted to illustrate this point because the gaming industry is consumer driven, obviously, and mostly about the experience of the gamer. So if we look at where the insurance industry is going, I think we can all agree that the experience of the policyholder that's not in the background anymore. It's right at the center. And because of that, one needs to understand the importance of this convenience factor, because I think that will remain a key driver for sort of innovations in the future. Now, I believe the policyholder of tomorrow will be looking for convenience, sort of more and more each day. So you can say that, as an insurer, I deliver a good product, but so does the third and fourth insurer, and all the other insurers also sort of deliver good products. So that's not a differentiator anymore. I think it hasn't been a differentiator for quite a while, actually. How easy you can make it for the policyholder, I think that's the sweet spot. Now, when this digital sort of revolution started, there were isolated innovations like digital quote comparisons and the ability to sort of enable digital onboarding. But these, those were just sort of the tip of the iceberg, I think. Because if you think about machine learning, data analytics, and the potential to actually combine all of these, it starts to lead you to a place where the most likely sort of place we will end up is having a string of innovations all put together, which in the future I think will speak to a completely digital sort of personalized experience for the policyholder, probably having a range of options at your fingertips, not even sort of having to speak to a person, maybe not even having to leave your home to go to a specific doctor for a checkup so that doctor can give the okay to the underwriter. I think it'll probably mean that you would only wait for underwriting decisions for a few seconds, as opposed to days or weeks. So, what does this mean for the insurer? I think it means that the competency you need to invest in is the ability to look at all of this, and sort of effectively string together multiple innovations, as opposed to looking for that single big thing, because that's the competency that you'll need, I think, in this new world. So let's look at the market. If you look at the differences in the markets and how that affects the general sort of policyholder journey, and their requirements, I think in a more mature market, the policyholder wants an online experience that's quick and user-friendly, consists of most likely a range of options, savings or cover options, but which should be preferably customizable, at least to some extent, and would require immediate sort of decision-making by the insurer. In other words, automated decision-making. And that goes for underwriting as well. So we'll need to start to think about smart underwriting and that sort of thing. In developing markets, I think there's a need for more towards mobile straight-through processing, cover of savings options that are simple, sort of simple enough, and so that it requires minimal explanation. It's so that it can be sort of easily triggered by something like USSD functionality, for instance. So what you would need to respond, what you would need in order to respond to this as an insurer, and in terms of technology, I think is really very different. So you need to understand which market segment you're looking at and which market segment you are servicing, because the tech stack that you need, the technology requirements are really very, very different. Okay, so what are the next steps? Well, once we've sort of looked at this, I think the next step is the digital roadmap. So mapping out the ideal digital journey. I don't think that's where the challenge lies. I think it comes in with your tech stack and how you marry those two. So those your sort of technical ability with the requirements of your specific market. So do you rip and replace? Are you able to enhance what you have, or should you sort of add a digital layer on top of legacy technology that you already have? I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for this, but I do think that in the attempt to answer these or to make these decisions, there's a few principles I think one needs to consider. So firstly, I think understand what your business should look like. What does that journey look like that you want to give to your customers, and then figure out which innovations you need to string together to build that journey. That's the first thing. I think secondly, don't try to digitalize until you've modernized your technology base, because if you think about it, if you try to plug in a sort of well mapped out digital journey into a tech stack that can't handle that, you'll probably cause more harm than good, actually, because the policyholder will sort of experience a frustrating journey that gets stuck every now and again, and then you run the risk of losing them, of course. Then, thirdly, understand the business value for each step in your roadmap, and make sure that the business value is realized before moving to the next step, because technology, just for the sake of technology, means very little. I think you need to be able to see if you are reaching your journey goal after each step. And of course, we shouldn't delay. I think COVID, all COVID's really done is to accelerate all of this. So it's really very important to act quickly as an insurer. Okay. Then some high-level areas just to really get into the digital roadmap. Some considerations I think one needs to work with. Firstly, the existing tech stack architecture. How friendly is that? How friendly is that to transformation? That's something you would, I think, need to look into initially. Then secondly, your digital onboard capability. What does that look like in your current situation? Are you able to enable your brokers digitally to do what they need to do, or do you need to change? And then your technology partner, very important. Are you having those discussions? Are you working with a technology partner that is progressive in thinking? I think that is a very important consideration that you think about. And then intelligent process automation is the next one. Are you having those intelligent process automation discussions that will really smooth that digital journey in the future? And then lastly, do you see the elements available which you can put together to create a straight-through process in the future? I mean, even when it comes to underwriting, or would the process need to stop because of some onerous manual task that needs to be performed in the back end by a person or a human? If so, those are the things you need to think about. How do you address that? How do you start to think about solutions for that as soon as possible? I think at the end of the day, the success will hinge on how effectively, and how convenient you can make it. You can make that experience for your policyholder. The suggestion I would make for working with costs, sort of that balancing between the cost and the value that you get. I would suggest that as you sort of move through your digital roadmap, that you build in a mechanism or mechanisms to enable you to have some sort of dashboard view of whether what you are doing in the first place is effective in terms of each step as you move through the roadmap, and that it has value. So, as an example, those sales agents that you now sort of digitally enabling with an onboarding capability, are they actually improving their figures? Is it actually working? And as you move through each step, I think it's very important to have that mechanism to raise the flags as you move along, because a lot of this is unknown. So I think that mechanism is crucial to have in place. And this now brings us to data analytics. There we go. So I think, needless to say, data integration and analysis of that data now becomes critical. So it really becomes vital here. And just a word of caution here, when working with data analytics, although it's very important to have some sort of, or to have an end goal in mind around how your complete data analytics picture should look like in the end, start simple. So focus on your roadmap measurements first. Those agents that are now sort of using the onboarding capability, is that something that's adding business value? Is that something that's being adopted by them? I think those are the starting points for analytics. Don't wait to build this huge, complex, and comprehensive data analytics engine. Focus on the small data wins first. I think if you do that, you'll see that something interesting happens. Like for instance, when you have simple data integration and analytics available for different levels of your workforce, they start to see opportunities much more quickly. So start to see opportunities, for instance, for robotic process automation. What are those mundane tasks that need to be done, but can be done by a robot? And secondly, the business starts to identify and remove those things a lot more quickly, those impediments for business growth, just because they can see it visually. It makes such a big difference. And then thirdly, I think your workforce, when I say workforce, I'm talking about the agents and staff alike. They're more informed on the real needs of the customers, and this really puts them sort of in a position to focus on the customers, which in turn sort of should boost sales, obviously. In conclusion, as I said earlier, I think technology, for the sake of technology, has little value. But if it's applied in ways that modernizes and digitalizes your business, then the business value can be immense. Now, just replacing your core platform with a best-in-class option, I don't think will do the trick on its own. You need to understand exactly how your tech stack will enable your people and your customers before you make a call on where to go and sort of how to approach it. So really what I'm saying is the strategic approach to this decision should be people-centric. It might require a more sort of nuanced approach where you have the digital front end, let's say for customers, enabled while maintaining those existing policies on a legacy platform in the back end. That might be, but something like that could potentially give you the flexibility to migrate on your own terms as an insurer, and not sort of rip and replace too soon, if that makes sense. So, I guess this digitalization buzzword is a buzzword for a reason. It brings with it a huge amount of potential benefit if you work with it in a constructive way. I think if you do work with this in sort of this measured, constructive way, you could add immediate value to your business, but also as you move on, a lot more value in the future. But just take that first step. Understand where you want to end up as an insurer. What is that digital picture that you want to provide to your customers? What does that journey look like? Where do you want to end up as a digital insurer? And then start to build the business cases for that. I think building those business cases with the right partners is absolutely crucial. This last sort of statement that I have here, I think is very important, and for me encapsulates what I want to say is, if you want to capture the digital consumer of tomorrow, I think it will depend on getting those business cases right today. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Next up, we've got Yasar Yilmaz, the Head of Financial Services, Middle East and Africa, Turkey and Israel for Microsoft. Yasar is a digital transformation strategist specialized in financial services industry with about more than 20 years of experience spanning across Turkey, Eastern Africa, Eastern Europe, Israel, Middle East and Africa. He's a design thinking and led innovation practitioner and a blockchain enthusiast. So throughout many technology-led reimagined business processes, improvement engagement for financial services industry customers along his career at PwC, Oracle, SunGard, FIS, Capgemini, SAP, and Microsoft. Yasar, I look forward to your presentation. Thank you once again very much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. First of all, I'd like to thank Silverbridge for being with us today, and also to our esteemed speaker from MMI. I look forward to Yoshi's session as well. Tony, just help me with one little thing. So I'm going to ask a little question to everybody who's attending this event now. Can you tell me in the chat, what is your favorite brand in the world, and which product of that brand you like the most? I'll give you 10 seconds. If you could please write your responses as like Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, for example, is my favorite brand, and that's my favorite product. What is yours? I'd like to hear that. So I'll wait for like 10 seconds. And if you could tell me, Tony, some of the answers coming up in the chat, I would really appreciate it.
Read you some of them.
Okay.
Okay, we've got Apple iPhone, Amazon AWS, Discovery Health, Vitality, Cadbury Whole Nut, We've got Amazon one-click book buying, Amazon iPhone, sorry, Apple iPhone, Nike training and shoes, Garmin Phoenix watch, Google Discovery Health Vitality, Ben and Jerry's half-baked, Apple iPad Pro.
That's fair enough, but I'll take a screenshot of that after the event. Thanks, Tony. So I just have one more question. The people who said Discovery and Vitality Insurance, are they from the company itself or are they the customers of that organization? I'm curious.
We have a customer, would be the one response.
So this is the first time when I ask this question, and I attend a lot of webinars, events, obviously being in the region for 20 years, I have a little bit of a fun to amuse myself when I ask this question, and never ever anybody picks a bank like, oh, I love XYZ bank and I love my mortgage loan, right? I mean, I'm so thrilled that I got an answer finally in my 25 years of career that somebody says, I love my insurance company and I like my, I don't know, long-term life insurance or auto insurance. Look, I think this is one of the fundamental problems we are trying to address here, right? I mean, to me, as Yasar, if I don't get to see the face of my insurance company, that's good life for me, right? And I think you can understand the philosophy behind that as to why I'm saying that. Now, couple of things that I'd like to share with you. Now, if you look at the future of insurance, of course, consumer will be at the epicenter of everything, with the insurer providing the services to that consumer, and we will see the emergence of collaborators. We are already seeing that, and I'll touch upon that. So the future of insurance is something I would summarize in 4 pillars. It has to be, and it is going to be invisible, connected, insights-driven, and purposeful. Now, what do I mean by these at a very high level? With invisible, I mean, can I have my, for example, delayed flight reimbursements automatically without me even being bothered with? I mean, as a father, as a human being, as a citizen, like I hold a bank account like all of you. I hold insurance policies, etc. My credit card has this, travel insurance, but not for once I was able to leverage that travel insurance because of some of the delays and issues I had while flying. I really don't know, and I can't be bothered, really. So can this be done invisibly? So that kind of invisibility is good, right? So I don't mean to say I don't like insurance companies. We need insurance companies, but the logic is, can we make this more seamless, more straight through processing, right? Ben actually mentioned that. The second one is the future of insurance will be connected. So we're talking about bringing constellations of value, interoperable, trusted environments that enable all the collaborators around the concept of insurance beyond insurance to create more value for the customers and for the organizations. And I'll touch upon that as well. And insurance, of course, being heavily digital, and by digital I mean, pretty much everything is records and systems, right? An insurance company does not have a product or a warehouse or a factory. Everything is like pen and paper and records. So in that regard, there's an opportunity to step up advice and generate financial intimacy with their customers, because customers really expect return on consent for that trust, and they will benefit from this insight, sometimes beyond things that they can imagine. And lastly, insurance will be and have to be purposeful. So here we're talking about open innovation, collective, collaborative product development, environmental, social governance, especially in retirement planning type of long-term insurance categories, and of course, overall value creation, which I see as particularly in South Africa a lot in terms of how the companies create value, and they really monitor this with KPIs. Now, if I look at the insurance companies in terms of the technologies that are available to you at the back of especially cloud deployments, where these solutions are becoming more and more economic, there is so much stuff that you can leverage, right? Mobility solutions, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, IoT, drones, telematics, and you name it. Now, the key here that I believe it is very important for me to mention to you that you should keep in mind is that it is very important to understand what your organization needs to be solved, to be addressed. And then based on that, we start mapping those technologies. I see a lot of insurance companies having AI strategy. That is great, but maybe an alternative strategy could be to look at, you know what, I have a problem with customer churn. I have a problem with claims efficiency from the point of first notice of loss for such and such reason. What do I do there? So when we go into sub-processes of those key industry needs, you may see that for your organization, you might need an AI capability, whereas another one might need a mobility solution and RPA, depending on the policy, the product, the customer segment, your budget for technology, your employee skill sets, etc. So we combine all of these together as Microsoft. We can basically offer you any type of innovation with our partner ecosystems like Silverbridge as well, to address those areas to get to that next evolutionary stage in how you would like to serve your markets. And our key promise here is basically this. Look, Microsoft is not an insurance company, right? We work with organizations like Silverbridge to offer you the deep vertical capabilities, but hear me out. Future, well, is very dynamic. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Definitely insurance services will be very relevant, but depending on what the market is bringing to us in terms of challenges, anomalies, or opportunities, how the competitors are attacking us, it's very important that you need to have an agile environment where you plug in new capabilities to your environment, and the time to market, time to value should be super fast. So those days when you have like this 2-year transformation projects, programs, you know, we don't have that luxury. And the systems that you use to run your businesses successfully should be flexible. You know, as you grow, the system should grow. As you need to analyze more things, onboard more customers, acquire new customers, you know, triple the number of your brokers and agents. You know, it should be flexible, scalable enough to handle that. But everything should be robust, right? Everything should be secured by a control plane so that, you know, with the emergence of the COVID, of course, you know, the digital processes have increased. That means more financial criminals, more fraudulent behavior, and then. So the system, the platform, the environment that we have to run our businesses should be on a robust platform. And this is exactly the promise of Microsoft. We believe a cloud approach, in this case, I'm talking about Azure, of course, where on top of which we plug in those new capabilities. We also give you the development capabilities to ensure that you can develop your own features and functions rather than, you know, buying software, incorporating, is going to be the melting pot for your organization for today's requirements and also for the future requirements. So that's what we call the platform approach. Now let's start with the first one, is invisibility. What do I mean by this? I'll give you some examples. I thought, you know, sharing stories are more effective than, you know, just saying that this is important and this is the return on investment you get. Maybe you could relate to some of these, and maybe we can ignite some ideas in your minds. I see insurance companies focusing more and more in this innovation space, not for the sake of innovation, but really driving, you know, cost reduction, increasing net promoter scores, or acquiring more customers, and the KPIs go on. So one of our customers, I'm sure you all know, Swiss Re, the reinsurance company. Now, although their business is on reinsurance space, in recent years, they looked at ways to diversify their offerings. And they explored a new flight insurance microservices model based on small single risks with a fully automated consumer journey. So they wanted to create this really simple, straight through processing type of claim origination process where, you know, these could be offered by airlines, travel agents, and any other partners, which I call the collaborators, to offer this value-added service. So we, of course, leverage our Azure cloud platform to drive that innovation where the system that they have deployed monitors flights with our partner flight stats and automatically reimburses the passenger if an eligibility criteria in the case of a delay is fulfilled. So to me, that's invisibility. Remember what I just said when I started beginning my conversation. I'd love not to see my insurance company at all. I need insurance. It's a must. World is full of risks. But can I be just completely disconnected for some of the administrative things which would make my life easier? So I can see my insurance company as a lifestyle partner that makes my life easy, like my mobile phone does. Another example is NSSF. This organization would receive approximately 90 to 100 claims a day. And all of these were manually processed, would take 10 to 15 years, right? And days of my life in insurance, the claim processing speed. And customers really pay attention to that. So they wanted to improve the cost efficiency and, of course, cut down the processing time to delight the customers. And what we did with them is we used our machine learning classifier protocols to determine whether a claim requires manual payment adjustments or it can be automated fully. And we trained the classifier, the AI, based on historical claims. And as time passes by, as the actual claims take place, of course, the AI learns more and more, and the efficiency, the accuracy of the platform increases, which in return impacts the customer delight that we are talking about. And this proof of value that was done back then, there was a 71% accuracy, and the cost in terms of processing time was decreased, and the processing time itself was also decreased from 15 to 1 day. So, I would love to work with an insurance organization like this, right? It's the servicing rather than the types of policies that you offer to the customers that is important. Another one, this is not long-term insurance, but I find this quite impactful to make my point in the auto claims, right? How can we leverage, for example, AI to detect the damage in a car? And this can be even extended to corporate environments. Imagine a factory is burnt down using drone technology. By feeding live video footage to AI, we can immediately assess the damage, where normally that would take, with the surveillance, quite a lot of time, right? With AI, with analytics, we can really impact the claim processing time. And in this case, Claim Genius, one of our partners in AI space using our Azure AI services, is able to promise that at a 50% reduction. So these are some of the invisibilities that I'm talking about, how we can cut down processing time, how we can augment the human workforce, or sometimes make things autonomously. So this is what I call the invisibility part. And I think an insurance company invisible in that sense is a good insurance company. Now let's have a look at the insights-driven pillar. One of our customers, Progressive Insurers, they introduced auto-quoting tool with Flow chatbot for Messenger. They developed a customer-facing chatbot, which was exposed through Facebook Messenger, to make the quotation as simple as possible, because they wanted to be where they wanted to engage their customers, where the customers are spending their time. And the other kind of philosophy behind this approach was to reduce the cost of customer acquisition. This is not only an insurance challenge, but also a banking industry, overall, and financial services industry challenge. Everybody is interested in acquiring customers, not just increasing wallet share per customer. But when you want to acquire customers at scale, there is a bit of a cost and sometimes a dissatisfaction along the process, right? I recently wanted to open an offshore bank account with a large universal bank. Just for them to come back to me took 5 days, just to respond to the email that I sent. Nobody wants these kind of experiences, whether insurance, whether bank, or whether any financial institution, or whether you're in any industry, right? This timeliness is super, super important. And again, that chatbot was utilizing, for those who might be a little bit techie in the audience, our Azure Cloud Platform bot framework, Azure Bot Services, and Azure Cognitive Services, which is the AI tool that we heavily utilize in the insurance space. If P&C Insurance, also another great example, where we use Azure Machine Learning Analytics to tackle big data analytics workloads. So basically, they were looking for an engine to predict customer churn and to improve their next best action for the call centers. And believe it or not, like many other insurance companies, they were benefiting a lot from SAS Institute's analytics, but it was a lot of cost for them. So we migrated that to Azure. We also replaced some of the modeling and the calculation engines from SAS to Microsoft platform. Now, having said that, I would like to put one parenthesis here. Recently, you might have heard our CEO, Satya Nadella, and SAS Institute CEO, Jim Goodright, we announced a great global strategic partnership, and we are bringing that partnership to the region. And one of the interests of SAS Institute is actually, although you might say, well, you announced partnership and then you're just complaining about SAS, they recognize that, and we are going to have initially a lift and shift kind of a dialogue to migrate SAS 9.4 or any 9.x platform to Azure. But not only that, SAS is now utilizing Azure's native analytics services to create new insurance or banking specific analytical applications, especially in the risk space, that will be natively running on Azure. So I also would like to highlight this scenario to you, which I think is going to open a lot of possibilities for our customers at a very economical cost point. Another example which I really find fascinating, and I think this would relate to us who would be holding insurance policies a lot, it's around what we call the claim fault gray area. So Liverpool Victoria wanted to reduce the time that it takes to resolve auto accident claims, in which there's always a bit of a gray area as to, whose fault is this, so it's very subjective. And in their case, 20% of all these claims were falling into this category, and the settlement was quite an arduous journey, and they wanted to look at alternative ways to solve that problem. So by combining the customer's verbal explanation with some static field data and vehicle damage information, exposing this to a machine learning algorithms, the determination of the outcome of a disputed claim was actually accelerated, and it has become highly accurate. So as you can see, the return here, now only 3.9% of claims fall into what they consider as no man's land, which actually came down from 20%, which is a huge jump, as you can imagine, right? This is also another great example. I think it's a bit more related with the long-term insurance, which is always a bit more complicated, or it could be a bit trickier, although you don't necessarily get to see a lot of transaction volumes against the life cycle of the policy. So one of our partners, Spark Beyond, they have a AI development platform that runs on our cloud platform. They looked at this challenge of underwriting new customers for life insurance, and the problem there was these require invasive medical checks. A life insurance company wanted to use new data to onboard new customers without medical checks, or decreasing the invasiveness of the medical checks or the number and types of medical checks. So what Spark Beyond did on Microsoft Cloud Platform, they created a data set, right? They looked at internal customer data, which is behavioral, financial, some non-invasive, self-reported medical data. They looked at external data sets on that specific consumer. They looked at external data sets to do a better psychographic and behavioral profiling of the customer by analyzing their financial, credit, health, including 11 new data sources that they could actually leverage within their analytical context. With the new predictive model, by expanding their data population, using their Spark Beyond AI platform running on Azure, the insurer was able to underwrite 31% more clients without the need for any invasive checks. And obviously, you can imagine this unlocked a lot of new good things for them. First of all, less data is requested. There's still this element of invisibility, right? Rather than putting the patient, or sorry, the person on the spot and doing all the checks within the specificity of that individual with invasive procedures. Now we took a little bit time off from that experience and tried to understand that individual's context by looking at external data sets. So I think this is also a great example that I would consider as a very innovative approach that eventually, of course, delights the customer and impacts the value that we create as an insurance company. On the retirement and pension planning, I think this is a very popular area. BlackRock, which is the world's largest financial institution, I think they manage something like $8 trillion assets under management. It's a very large Microsoft customer. So we reimagined the retirement and pension planning with them. and BlackRock and Microsoft created a portfolio platform called Aladdin. Now they are, by the way, availing that to Middle East, Africa, some of the countries, if not all the customers, as a service where not the individual customer, but the advisors on the planning side within insurance companies or banks or other asset managers can use that platform to offer the best matching financial instruments for the lifelong savings plans of their customers, which is a very impressive platform. And I can share a lot more details about that with you. So these are some of the examples I wanted to touch upon within the context of insights-driven insurance. Let's have a look at the connected insurance piece. Now, I'd like to give an example from banking industry here, and for a reason, because I think it's a little bit more relatable and easier to understand what I'm trying to explain here. Look, nobody wakes up in the morning dreaming of a mortgage loan, right? But people dream of a house. Now, if you think about a person's relation with a house, it basically starts with a planning, right? I need to save for the house. So can the financial institution help the customer save for the house, find the property, buy the property, and at that stage borrow some money, move into the property, decorate the property, or maybe just do some renovation inside the property, insure the property, and keep on maintaining the property. Now, if you look at that relation of a customer with a home loan product, and if you notice the adjacencies, the ecosystem around that product, the question is like, how much of that value are you capturing? So with connectivity, with collaboration, what we are talking about here is that likewise, the insurance companies also need to transform their products to become a more intrinsic lifestyle partner of their customers. Microsoft Ventures and American Family Insurance, for example, partnered to create a business accelerator program focusing on startups. And these are some interesting startups which I wanted to share with you, like Chai Energy delivers real-time energy understanding and offers this as a value-added service to their customer. An insurance company can offer that. HeatWorks is a connected monitoring platform that conserves water, energy, and looks at any anomalies to kind of prevent any damages and claim leakages also for the insurance company. I think you get the idea, right? How can I, in this case, for example, either innovate around these with an ecosystem, or build that ecosystem and incorporate that into my product development, or even the policy lifecycle process, or by learning from the customer feedback, create an iterative cycle to constantly offer new products at scale to my customers rather than sticking to traditional products that we see in the insurance space. Or the telematics, which is like digitization, is heavily used. Can I, for example, create a more cost-effective hardware-driven environment to monitor the driving behavior of the customer and cut down the policy premium for the customer on the car insurance side? Now, normally in the past, some insurance companies would install a little device, but with a certain level of accuracy, you can still use the accelerometer in the smartphone to analyze the behavior of the drivers and dynamically adjust the pricing of their premium, especially at the renewal stage. It's all about connectivity, and you can offer that connectivity maybe as an offer with other collaborators in the industry, maybe the car manufacturers, right? Some people might accept, some people might not accept that, but it's an opportunity. Another area that I find something very relevant is basically this. I mean, I would never go and invest in heavy financial instruments or life savings plan or rather an expensive insurance policy without talking to my friends, right? So it's not only looking at the internet and doing my due diligence. I also would like to talk to people. So here we're talking about adding your other customers to your channel. So you accept the reality that customers talk to other customers. Why don't you create a platform where your customers can be your advocates, but sometimes, if you're not really good, this can also work against you, but you offer that reality to your customers as a service. not on a customer-to-customer level, but one of our customers in Netherlands, for example, recognized this, and they provided to their clients a comprehensive advisory base, so that these advisors would offer independent and unbiased financial recommendations to these potential customers, not necessarily existing customers. And they brought this platform as a value-added service to their customers, because they recognize this fact, right? People talk to people. So how can I bring that conversation into my ecosystem while ensuring that I provide this unbiased viewpoint with this ecosystem? And the last one is being purposeful. So here I will talk about value creation. Now, I lightly touched upon this in the previous slides, but if you look at, again, the state of insurance here, right? So I insure my house, but if something goes wrong, I'm safe. I can just go and claim against the damages from my insurance company. That's all great. But what if you follow the path of AXA Smart Home, for example, right? What AXA Smart Home did was basically to install some monitoring devices to ingest data initially from smoke detectors. And this slide, as you can imagine, is very evolutionary. A lot of other services are added to water systems, to the piping and the electricity circuitry and the heating systems, et cetera, et cetera. What if I actually ingest data from those? And by doing that, I offer this value to my customer, which is helping them protect their probably most valuable asset, right? Their home. And also, while doing that, in a almost selfish way, I am managing the potential claim losses. Now, the selfishness might come across as negative, but at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for every party, right? It's a win-win situation for the customer, the homeowner. It's a win-win situation for the insurance provider, because you're protecting the policy premium revenue that you can make by minimizing the claim leakages on that platform. Now, of course, for such a scenario, you use Internet of Things, you use AI, and these things, these technology components are now all deployable on cloud at a much more economical cost. And the interesting piece is, like, coming back to my platform slide, as things change, as things evolve, you can always plug in new capabilities to this environment. So to really transform something that you might have started small and then enlarging it to offer even new value-added services to your customers, because you are not on a purpose-built platform, on a purpose-built system, which is monolithic. You're leveraging a cloud environment where the solution set that you are using can be modernized by plugging in a lot of new add-ons. So that's all from my side. I hope I was able to, put some examples behind some of the topics that we discussed to make it a little bit more real for you, and also to help you understand what is it that Microsoft can do to help you as Microsoft, and also with our partners like Silverbridge. Thank you very much, and over to you, Tani.
Thank you very much, Yasar. That was very interesting. So much to consume and to consider there in those slides. So thank you very much for that. We're going to go over into the panel discussion now. We've got 30 minutes. Thanks to Ben and Yasar for managing that time so well in your presentations. It was great. We're going to start off with just giving a quick opportunity for both Yoshine as well as Lee to just provide us a little bit of their take on what was just said before we then start discussing a little bit. Just a reminder again to the attendees, in the Q&A tab there, you can put your questions that we could ask. We've already received some questions, so thank you very much for that. And then just to mention again, for those of you that didn't hear me in the beginning, Yoshine Pariachi is the Chief Information Officer at MMI Holdings. Yoshine specializes in IT strategies, so IT strategy services and solution delivery, with over 22 years IT systems experience within the financial services industry. Yashin, thank you very much for participating today.
Thank you, Tony. Yasar and Ben, thank you for an insightful presentations. I think there's some key discussion points that you guys raised that is very relevant to, I guess, the journey right now, and then also looking toward in terms of what the insurance journey of tomorrow would be. I think some key takeouts in terms of, I think, Ben, firstly, from your presentation, that really stood out is the whole convenience factor and the key in terms of choice from a consumer and a client perspective that becomes very relevant. And also building on the fact that, that product is definitely not a differentiator. I think that's a key thing that you've landed. And that definitely customer engagement and customer satisfaction becomes key to this discussion. And ease of use and simplification is key in terms of getting it right. And in terms of some of the roadmaps and strategies that you've suggested, definitely leaves food for thought in terms of how we do that. I just think from a takeaway perspective in terms of what resonated for me from the discussion points that you've put down was key and that stood out for me is that, it's key to understand the customer needs and understand what those special needs are from a personalization perspective. And the key success factor that I think you definitely brought across quite strongly is that, there's this need to instill trust in terms of bringing through that technology and matching it with that personalization to get the view where the customer is king in this day and age of creating preferences. And then if I move on to Yasar's presentation, I think Yasar, quite a bold statement in terms of being invisible. I think that's something I don't think we actively acknowledge, particularly in the insurance space, but that's definitely something I think you've definitely hit the nail on the head in terms of that. And I think the key takeouts there in terms of the connectedness and, driving this customer engagement and marrying technology with the, customer needs through insightful, insight-driven actions and definitely being purposeful is the key themes that have come through. And also in terms of, understanding the landscape from an integration partner perspective, I think the key things that came across is that there's many ways in terms of navigating this journey to the future of insurance. And I guess in terms of definitely the value proposition, I think, Ben, you've also touched that from a customer perspective, is how do you carefully craft that in terms of understanding what are the core capabilities you're going to deliver and what are the capabilities you will partner with in terms of, likes of platform as a service, AI, etc. So I think that's the takeout from me, really, really insightful and thoughtful in terms of, I guess, delivering business value from a realization perspective, but also, I guess, making sure that the customer is key. Over to you, Tony.
Very much, Yashin. Hands-on experience there with implementation and managing the challenges in a financial services IT environment. Thanks for those insights, Yashin. Next up, we've got Lee Caper, Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Silverbridge. Lee, please give us some of your thoughts.
Thanks, Tony. I think for me, really interesting takes from both Ben and Yasar. When thinking about insurance in the future, there's obviously a lot of questions which one starts to think about. And I mean, the talk's centered around technology mostly. And I think we always see the future as technology, but I think there's a lot of interesting parts which go together with technology. And I think Ben has touched on some of those and Yasar has touched on some of those. It's not just about the insurance product, or not just about the technology, but sort of really an integrated process. I think the two things that were quite interesting for me is, the one is, Yasar spoke a lot about what we can do, and what are the things that one can look at doing, and some examples, some great examples of things that some insurance companies are doing. I think Ben spoke a little bit more about how one goes about it. How do you actually practically start working with some of these things? And I think that's always the interesting challenge is, you read a lot about these types of things that companies out there are doing, and you can have conversations like these where you hear these amazing stories, but the challenges really lie in how do you do it, how do you get it done, and how do you practically work with it. I think Rishi asked a question which we'll probably get to, which is very much in that space. How do you practically start working with some of these things? So yeah, looking forward to sharing my views, at least on that, with the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, very interesting environment. There's just so many what one could call loose ends, etc., which makes it so important to start at some sort of a constructive point, and not just headlong get into trying to digitalize, as the buzzword goes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go straight into some of the questions from the audience to so that we can start engaging with them. I think the first question that I've got is from Rishi Sunundam, and he asks, or she asks, I understand that digital transformation should be super fast, but the challenge is change management in an organization that is slow. How do we make this super fast? So I think let's start with Yoshine, because you, as I said, in the hot seat at the company, where do you start with that transformation in the organization from your perspective?
That's quite a complex one, but I think it's quite a relevant one in terms of trying to land success in any initiative that you take on, particularly of this nature. So I think from a change management perspective, there has to be a conscious decision that it's about transformation, and it's people, process, technology, and innovation, at the same time. And I think there's a lot of effort and focus that's placed on, the technology implementation and change management, where the people stuff is generally left behind in terms of what I call the pink and fluffy stuff, where you need to get people excited in terms of accepting that change. And I think, Tony, by nature, when it comes to change as human beings, it's fight or flight as a natural state, generally. But it's definitely getting, the workforce involved in understanding the change, and also addressing, threats. As to there's a lot of threats in terms of, going on this digital journey, bringing in AI. Do I still have job security, etc.? That also slows down those pieces in terms of adoption from a change management perspective. So those are key aspects. I think beside the technical stuff that you need to bed down, the only way to get momentum at a quicker pace is getting the people component in terms of the pink and fluffy stuff that we normally ignore as technologists, and making that an active part of a rollout of an initiative. That's my take on it.
Thank you very much, Yoshine. If there are any comments maybe from yourself, Lee?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I mean, I think Yoshine has touched on a lot of my views as well. I mean, I think the difficulty around making any sort of big change or big advance in any business really sort of comes to head when you work with the people. And I think Rishi's question sort of really talks to that. Change management is really about working with people. I think you have to, as an organization, think about change not as an event. So if you see this as a change event that's going to occur, I think you typically will find it to be very difficult. But if you see change as a constant part of what you as an organization do, it's not easy, but it becomes easier. So I think in Yashar's presentation, he spoke about how you think about a platform, and the platform having to be adaptable, flexible, and robust. I think you need to think about an organization the same way. So you need to think about your people in the same way. And you need to work with your people in the same way, so that you get to a place where the people in the organization are adaptable, flexible, but still robust in terms of being able to do the job. And I think a big part of that comes down to trust. If you don't have the trust between the company and the people that work for the company, you're always going to get resistance to change. If you're able to instill trust, then hopefully those people can also trust you that the change is the right thing, and that things like the insecurities that Yashin mentioned, which is about losing my job and things like that, become easier to navigate if there's that trust. So,
thank you very much, Lee. Our next question, and I think I'm going to start, Yasar, if you don't mind, because your experience as well with the emerging markets. But Yolanda from Kenya asked a question: considering some of the common challenges we face across the African continent, what are your thoughts on incremental modernization to reach the desired end state of your digital roadmap?
I think, well, first of all, thanks for asking that question. In Microsoft, we really embrace exactly what our audience member has mentioned. We have a framework called Horizon Planning. So you start with Horizon 1, 2, 3. I mean, you can call it short-term, mid-term, long-term, etc. So generally speaking, on Horizon 1, when you embark on this digital transformation journey, on cloud, off cloud, whichever you like, but in general terms, we start with establishing the control plane, right? So for example, if you have very outdated mainframe-based systems, first of all, we need to kind of, up that platform a little bit before you think about all these advanced cognitive computing capabilities, open insurance, APIs, etc. We need to get to a certain maturity level. At Horizon 2, we look at modernizing our applications. On Horizon 3, we look at rather innovative or at times disruptive business models, right? Like the example I gave, how do you build a collaboration with other players around your insurance policy? Now, this is a bit of an agile approach. I think in program management world, this agile sprints, making small changes, making sure the employees are, utilizing that new way of doing things, processing things, etc. And then you might accelerate at the back of that. Now, that is, I think, a very traditional way of saying, that is the right way to do. But having said that, we started seeing some of our customers jumping to Horizon 3 from the beginning and looking at from top-down approach, meaning, I want to achieve that status. I want to be able to offer these, high-end services for customers, or we always talked about customer, but it can be things about risk management in insurance, which is a very complex domain. And I want to reverse engineer from there. And some of these things that I'm going to engineer might be Horizon 1, some of them might be Horizon 2. So what I'm trying to say is, in addressing that question, for me to be able to give a right answer, well, I have to say one little thing. It really depends on the customer. I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but that's why with this cloud, Microsoft also realized we need to engage with our customers with what we call, this digital advisor, digital architect kind of colleagues who actually analyzes the maturity level of the customer from a people process technology perspective, and look at the desirability of something, viability of something, and the feasibility from a technology perspective, and prioritize that. So it's really all about what she, I think, mentioned. Go with incremental steps, but whether you want to modernize gradually or you want to pick a big topic, which you believe is going to be very impactful, and then modernize everything to achieve that end target. We see both options in the market.
Yashin, your experience within MMI?
So I think, Tony, from a journey perspective, we've seen that in terms of modernizing, particularly in the Africa space, based on challenges that we have, incremental modernization is something that we have to tackle in order to get the basics right. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing. I think in terms of that, from a roadmap perspective, and I think it draws very true to something that Ben said, is that taking that customer along that journey in terms of making sure when to do what in terms of that digital journey, or from an AI perspective, and maybe not having a full end-to-end process, and trying to find that balance in terms of not creating that frustration and confusion in the network from a customer experience perspective. So that becomes quite challenging in terms of some of the decisions that you make. And I think with from an experience perspective, what my takeaway is that in terms of the horizon view that Yasar spoke to, there has to be some calculated risk that you take in terms of making some of those decisions, because some of those decisions will cause some angst in terms of client experience. And we definitely have to find the balance in terms of how we do that appropriately, as opposed to not losing that opportunity to take our customers along the journey from a roadmap perspective.
Great, thanks, Yoshine. Ben, maybe you could comment a bit from a client perspective, because obviously you've had to deal with clients that have to make that decision quite often as to their modernization process and where they should start with that.
Thanks, Tony. I actually, I mean, and Lee also touched on it, and it links to Rishi's question as well. The difficulty in getting people to move, or sort of getting the organization to move, sits in people, right? So, and as Lee said, I mean, it comes down to trust. Can you instill that trust to get the people to move with you? That's what you need. But I go back to the how. I mean, practically, how do you do that? So, because I mean, 100% agree. Trust is something that's needed in the organization to get them to move and to get them to understand where to go. But I think in the how, for me, that sits in the translation. So everybody, each person wants to be okay. I'm comfortable in the job that I do today. All these weird and wonderful changes that the leadership of the company is talking about, where we are going and as an insurer, and how we're going to digitally service the customer. All of that sounds great, but how is that going to affect me as an individual, as an employee? Am I going to be okay tomorrow if we sort of make that move? So I think the key to get the organization to move is to sort of translate the roadmap and each of those items within the roadmap to the individuals within the company, to say, this is what it means for you. This is how your day-to-day life will change, and this is why you are going to be okay when we do change. That gets people excited. That sort of gets them comfortable to say, okay, well now I'm ready to go. Let's move. And I think you'll find that once you do that, once you get over that hurdle, you'll get the workforce to really sort of fall in behind you and help you to get to where you want to go. I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I see within the client space. When I talk about client space, within the insurers that we work with, I think if you can get that right and work with that in a constructive way, then you are going to be there.
Thanks, Ben. Lee, maybe I can just ask you, I think maybe a bit more of a strategic question with regards to, and I think I would like Yoshine's and Yasar's comment after on this as well. But Lee, to start with you about the involvement of reinsurers, because they play quite a overarching role with the industry as a whole, and they've got quite a helicopter view, lots of skills and experience, etc. What role do you think they are playing or should play in this process of digitization that we've got?
I think, Tony, a lot of the talk around digitalization and modernization centers around, and rightfully so, centers around the customer and the policyholder. But I think when you start to talk about the reinsurer, I think you sort of shift a little bit towards another element of digitalization, which I think is often overlooked, which is around better managing risk, better understanding risk. And I think that's really where the reinsurer has a very big interest. Really, what a reinsurer does is takes these risks at a much larger global level. So there's an interest for the reinsurer in understanding at an individual policyholder level, but yes, then at a reinsured organization's level, what that risk is and to manage that risk. And I think Yasar touched on some of the great examples where one can not only do it in a sort of traditional way, but digitally, but actually start to change the way you think about risk, start to prevent risk from occurring from materializing, as opposed to just paying out when it does. And I think the role that the reinsurers play is really to support the insurance companies, I think, in sort of transitioning towards this sort of more modern way of working from the risk perspective. I think that there are a lot of companies that understand that this is something that they would be able to do, but it's just too daunting to do it. It's maybe too daunting because they don't know where to start. And we've spoken a little bit about kind of how you do that incrementally and how you can tackle that. But sometimes it's also about they don't know how to they don't know how to do it because it's just too much of an investment up front for them to be able to sort of ride it out to get the return. So I think there the reinsurers can also play a role. They can play a supportive kind of funding role towards the insurance companies to actually help them to put these sort of digitalization initiatives in place, which will ultimately benefit the company, but also flow through to the reinsurers from a risk perspective.
Thank you very much, Lee. Yoshine, maybe your experience in the past with your reinsurers?
So I think, Tony, Lee has touched on a key point in terms of, particularly around managing, the risk profile at possibly a global level, and then drilling down into the individual level. I think the relationship with reinsurers from my past experience has been one that's been pretty complex, in terms of getting those conditions and, I guess, let's say, optimal work environment and process flow going in order to get the best benefit coming through. Totally, both from a reinsurer perspective, from an insurer perspective, and then from a customer perspective. I think the daunting task here is that the real problem is, where do we start? And I think Lee touched on that in terms of, how do we now expand this conversation in terms of, the investment, the return on investment to the client, and definitely the funding role in terms of us finding the right balance for us to move along this digital journey. And I think in terms of how the mindset needs to change is that there's definitely a more collaborative approach that needs to happen. I think in the past it was very, very risk-based in terms of conversation, but we do have to move beyond that, particularly not only from a process perspective, but a technology perspective, so that we do realize the wonderful opportunities that will come out of moving these relationships forward from a collaborative perspective, particularly around how do we now bring in, the technology landscape, where do we invest, what do we do to reinvent and revitalize this whole, let's say, business model and way to operate.
Thank you very much, Yashin. Yasar, maybe a couple of thoughts of yours after that.
No, I think Yoshin and Lee summarized it perfectly well. I'll just give two examples in terms of how we see reinsurance organizations are adding value to the insurance ecosystem. So we have two large insurance companies. One of them is Munich Re, the other is Swiss Re. So with Munich Re, we created an insurance platform to offer it to smaller insurance players that do not necessarily have the technology team capacity to develop really high-end systems or buy expensive solutions. And if a Munich Re type of a reinsurance company modernizes those insurance company, coming back to that value creation, like in the hospital, and then providing the insurance company providing IoT services to protect the house, decreasing the claim leakages. I think same thing is for the Munich Re type of reinsurance companies. If they can modernize by offering an economical insurance platform to run their multiple line of businesses, policy underwriting, risk computation, collections, disbursements, the whole life cycle, it's good for them, but it's good for the insurance company. Another thing we did with them was Munich Re today has the world's largest catastrophe modeling engine. Now you can imagine the amount of subject matter expertise and the technology, compute power, and the investment that goes behind that. This is availed to insurance companies. And likewise, Swiss Re also has a very sophisticated risk compute platform. Initially, they launched this for short-term, like a motor insurance kind of scenarios, where other insurance companies actually can utilize that risk platform for different types of actuarial analysis. So I really think that these large organizations have a lot of learnings, a lot of experience, expertise to share, especially with the small players. This is where I can see them, really adding value to themselves, but also to the overall insurance ecosystem.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Yasar. To end off with, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give the audience sort of a motivational one-liner as to their digitalization journey, and just to motivate a little bit in this cloud of difficulties. So I'm going to start with Ben to give us your motivational statement, and then move on to Yoshin.
Thanks, Tony. I think for me, it's not a. There's an end goal in sight, but it's a journey, and it's an exciting journey. It's not one that needs to be sort of feared or dreaded. It's something that will take us to a place that is better than where we are today. So I think, if one can see that, if you can see where you are going and where we are going to end up, then that's motivation in itself, because that gets you excited, and as an individual and as an organization, I think get that vision in place and make that vision sort of available to everybody within your organization. That will inspire. That will show people we know where we are going. We know what that looks like. So get them excited.
Thanks, Ben. Yoshin?
So I think, Tony, my one-liner would be is that the only boundaries that we build is the walls that we build around ourselves that prevent us from attaining success. So I think the first thing is that, yes, it is a very scary environment to navigate, and fear can be the worst emotion that you have. But like Ben said, having a solid vision as to where the end state is becomes important. But the key thing is that you also need to be flexible to say, maybe I need to change tact based on what I know now, as opposed to what I knew, a few months ago. And also have some kind of risk appetite to do that, so that you can attain success and you are agile and flexible, and that you are delivering, robust solutions to take your organization into the future. I think that's my my line of inspiration.
Thank you, Yassin. Yasar, yourself?
So I'll just make one bold statement. Let's see what Yoshin will think about this, but here I go. I think insurance companies like media channel, TV channels, like drama, right? The more the dramas happen around the world, business-wise, that's good. But of course, as a human, that's bad, right? I recognize this. Now, having said that, I really think if we take that selfish perspective and look at it from a value creation framework perspective, with this pandemic, we've all seen that an insurance company can be much, much more relevant for a human being anywhere in the world. And they can really take the flag and be the lifestyle partner of the customer, be the protector of the customer. They can really transform those risks. And everybody, I think, who had no clue about what risk is in its more, mathematical definition, now realizes what risk is, right? If I hear about news happening somewhere in the world, how quickly I can digest that and see the impact in a simulative manner in my business, right? So everybody now understands that. So I really think there is a great opportunity for insurance companies to truly be the pioneer, the leader, the cheerleader, front runner of this opportunity by being really more relevant for the individual customers. I really think it's the time. And I think this is a great opportunity for all the individuals that are working in an insurance company and also technologists like yourselves, right, who are serving the insurance industry. And now is the time to shine and really show how you can create value.
Thank you so much, Yasar. Lee, you've got the last statement, the last word.
Thanks, Tony. I'm gonna borrow from a colleague of mine, and sort of leave you with a thought that often it's in the doing that the idea comes. So it's important, yes, to think about where you need to go and what's possible and how you need to get there. But sometimes just by starting, by just doing something, you will start to figure out what's next and how this thing sort of evolves. So just want to encourage everybody to start doing. Start somewhere. Don't just sit and think about these things and talk about these things. Actually start practically working with these things.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, for me, personally, one of the most exciting things is the millions of people across our continent that will have access to financial services and to be able to safeguard their lives for the future journey through this digitalization process. So thank you very much to everybody for participating. Lee, Yoshin, Ben, and Yasar, it was great to have you on this webinar. Just to mention in closing that we have recorded this. We will be cleaning it up and editing a bit, and then it will be available to everybody to go back and recap on some of the things. And then you can be able to, we will send you an email so that you can link up to it and go and view some of this, share it with your colleagues and friends. So thank you very much to everybody for participating. Thank you very much for Silverbridge, who made this possible, and Yasar from a Microsoft perspective, Yoshin from an MMI perspective, for participating with us. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.